Have you ever really stopped to think about what's happening when you decide to move? I mean, really think about it. We're about to dive deep inside the human body and see just how a simple thought in your brain transforms into a powerful physical action. It's an incredible story. You decide to pick up your phone and it just happens. It feels instant, right? Almost effortless. But in that tiny fraction of a second, there is a breathtakingly complex chain reaction of electrical and chemical signals playing out at lightning speed. So let's pull back the curtain and see exactly how that magic happens. So here's our game plan. First, we'll track the initial signal that kicks the whole thing off. Then we're going to zoom way in to see the tiny machine that does the actual work. After that, we'll look at what fuels this machine, and finally, we'll see how this one fundamental process runs every single muscle in your body.
All right, first things first. Our story actually begins not in the muscle itself, but in your nervous system. Every single voluntary movement you make, from a tiny twitch to a full-on sprint, starts as an electrical impulse fired from your brain.
That electrical signal travels down a special kind of nerve cell, a motor neuron, and its final destination is this crucial handoff point, the neuromuscular junction, or NMJ. You can think of it as the finish line for the nerve and the starting line for the muscle. It's the exact spot where your nervous system literally talks to your muscular system.
So what happens at this junction? Well, first, that electrical signal zips down the neuron and arrives at the very end. This arrival triggers the release of a chemical messenger, a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. Now, when this acetylcholine latches onto receptors on the muscle cell, it's like a key turning in a lock. It throws open these tiny gates, allowing a flood of positively charged sodium ions to rush into the muscle cell. This massive influx of positive charge creates a brand new electrical signal, but this time it's in the muscle itself. And just like that, the message has been delivered.
Okay, so the muscle cell is now fired up. It's electrically excited. But how does an electrical signal become actual force? How does it make you move? To figure that out, we have to go even deeper. We're heading into the engine room.
So, if you look inside a single muscle fiber, you'll find it's packed with these long cylinders called myofibrils. And these myofibrils are built from tiny repeating segments called sarcomeres. The sarcomere, this is it. This is the fundamental unit of the muscle. It's the tiny little engine that, when it's repeated millions of times over, generates all human movement.
Now, this little engine has two main characters. First up, we have the thin filaments, made of a protein called actin. The easiest way to think about this is as a rope. Then we have our thick filaments, made of myosin. This is a motor protein with these little heads that are just itching to grab on and pull. So think of these as the hands. The entire goal here is super simple. Get the myosin hands to pull on the actin rope.
But wait, there's a built-in safety lock. I mean, if these myosin heads could just grab that actin rope whenever they wanted, our muscles would be stuck in a permanent state of contraction. To stop that from happening, two other proteins, troponin and tropomyosin, act like a protective covering, wrapping around the actin and blocking the spots where the myosin wants to grab. They're basically the brakes on the whole system.
So, how do we get those brakes off? How do we unlock this thing? The answer is a single special key: calcium ions. And this is where that electrical signal from earlier comes roaring back into the picture.
This is what's called the sliding filament model. Okay, so that electrical signal we talked about, it sweeps down into the muscle cell and tells a special storage tank to release a flood of calcium. This calcium immediately binds to troponin, which changes shape and yanks that protective tropomyosin covering right out of the way. All of a sudden, those binding sites on the actin rope are exposed. The myosin heads instantly grab on, forming what we call a cross bridge. And then comes the main event, the power stroke. The myosin heads pivot, pulling the actin filaments toward the center. The whole sarcomere gets shorter, and that right there is muscle contraction.
Now, all this grabbing, pulling, and releasing, it takes a ton of energy. This microscopic machine is working hard, so what's fueling it?
The fuel is ATP. It's the universal energy currency for all of our cells. But here's what's so cool. ATP is needed for two critical jobs. It not only provides the energy for the power stroke that pulls the actin, but it's also what makes the myosin head let go of the actin so it can reset for the next pull. This is actually why rigor mortis happens after death. Without any new ATP being made, the myosin heads get stuck, locked onto the actin, causing that stiffness.
And our muscles are masters at making ATP on demand.
For the first few seconds of a really explosive movement, like a sprint, they use a stored energy source called creatine phosphate for an instant burst. If you keep going, they switch to glycolysis, which breaks down sugar really fast for about another minute of work. And for any kind of sustained activity, jogging, walking, even just standing, the body relies on its most efficient system, aerobic respiration, which uses oxygen to pump out huge amounts of ATP.
But here's the thing. Not all muscle cells, or fibers, are created equal. Just like athletes, our muscle fibers are specialized for very different kinds of work.
So let's look at the two main types. On one side, you have your slow oxidative fibers. Think of these as your marathon runners. They contract slowly, they're incredibly resistant to getting tired, and they run on oxygen. You can think of this as the dark meat on a chicken. The muscles in your back that hold your posture all day, full of these. Then you have the fast glycolytic fibers. These are your sprinters, the white meat. They contract with incredible power, but they get tired really, really fast. They are built for short, explosive movements.
Okay, so we've gone from the nerve all the way down to the microscopic engine and its fuel. For this last part, let's zoom back out and see how this one amazing principle applies to the entire body.
And here is the truly incredible part. This elegant little dance of actin and myosin, that whole sliding filament model, it's the universal mechanism. So whether you're lifting a dumbbell, your heart is beating, or your stomach is digesting lunch, this same microscopic action is at the heart of it all.
And this one mechanism powers 3 very different types of muscle tissue, each one perfectly designed for its job. You have skeletal muscle, which you consciously control to move around. Then there's cardiac muscle, found only in the heart, built to pump nonstop for your entire life. And finally, smooth muscle, which works silently behind the scenes, lining your organs and blood vessels, taking care of all the automatic stuff that keeps you alive.
So their jobs are totally different, but all are vital. Skeletal muscle gives us voluntary movement. Cardiac muscle is the tireless pump for our circulation, with all its cells contracting together as one. And smooth muscle is the quiet workhorse, managing all those internal processes we never even have to think about.
And that's really the whole story. From a single thought in your brain, down a nerve, across a synapse, creating an electrical wave that releases calcium, unlocking a tiny engine that's fueled by ATP, it all comes down to that microscopic dance of proteins. An absolutely elegant and mind-blowingly efficient system.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? This perfect blend of form and function is just everywhere in biology. When you see how muscle fibers are so perfectly adapted for either endurance or for power, you have to wonder, what other parts of our bodies are built with that same beautiful, purpose-driven design? Something to think about.